Tonight, a Middle East power on how the war in Gaza could be brought to an end. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister tells me how the Gulf leaders' meeting went this week with Donald Trump, who believes some kind of deal is once again close.
President Trump is very, very committed to finding a path to ending the war, bringing the hostages out, bringing relief to the people of Gaza.
Blocked from attending the UN, Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas addressed it from the West Bank, saying the horror of Gaza's war hasn't ended his vision for a future state.
Palestine is ours. Jerusalem is the jewel of our hearts and our eternal capital. We will not leave our homeland.
He also declared that Hamas has no future in governing and demanded that they surrender. Also tonight, we followed the weapons making their way into Sudan's war. In an exclusive secret interview, a paramilitary intelligence officer tells Sky News his side is getting arms and backing from the UAE. And already accused of breaching NATO skies, Russia is now suspected of stoking a war in space. Good evening and welcome to The World with me, Yalda Hakim, live from the United Nations. President Trump has said he thinks some kind of deal is getting close again on Gaza after a week that's seen leader after leader call for the war to end. His efforts appear to have convinced the Saudi Foreign Minister, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud. He's only spoken to us after he and other Gulf leaders met Trump this week. He told me they made it clear the risks and dangers if Israel annexes the West Bank. President Trump, hosting Turkey's president earlier, signaled progress on a ceasefire. He'll meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu next week.
I had a great meeting with the leaders of that area, of that region, generally speaking, the Middle East. We had a great meeting the other day at UNGA, as you know, and I think we're close to getting some kind of a deal done.
Thousands of miles away, closer to the war itself, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas addressed the UN Assembly via video link after the Trump administration revoked his visa to be there in person.
The time has come for the international community to do right by the Palestinian people, so that they may obtain their legitimate right to be rid of the occupation and to not remain a hostage to the temperament of Israeli politics. We will not leave our homeland. We will not leave our land. Our people will remain rooted like the olive trees, firm as the rocks. We will rise from under the rubble to rebuild.
Well, shortly I'll speak to our US correspondent Mark Stone, who's here with me tonight. But first, here's my interview with the Saudi Foreign Minister.
Well, the meeting went very well. I think it's absolutely critical that President Trump is engaged on finding a path to a ceasefire in Gaza. It's been far too long. The war has gone on for far too long. Too many people have died. Too much suffering has occurred. We have a famine going on in Gaza right now. And I got the sense from the meeting that President Trump is very, very committed to finding a path to ending the war, bringing the hostages out, bringing relief to the people of Gaza. So I'm actually hopeful that we've started the dialogue that's going to get us towards achieving this ceasefire.
He's allegedly given reassurances about annexation of the West Bank and bringing the war to an end. We know that he's also going to be meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu. Do you feel reassured? And if not, what are the likely steps that Saudi Arabia is going to take?
So I feel reassured that the president understands how dangerous the idea of annexation in the West Bank is, how strongly the Arab and Muslim countries feel about the need to find an end to the war in Gaza, the need to find relief for the people of Gaza. So I am confident that the president will be engaged very actively on finding a pathway forward, and I have confidence that President Trump is the man able to actually get us to a better place.
You're not concerned about what may happen between now and Monday's meeting?
Of course, I'm very concerned. There are people dying every day in Gaza. Children are starving to death. So every minute counts, every day is a day too long of this conflict going on. So obviously I hope we can find a resolution as soon as possible.
For Saudi Arabia, why was the idea of Palestinian recognition so important? Because you've rallied a number of countries, you brought them to the table this week, and there has been recognition of staunch allies of Israel. Why was it so critical?
So with all that was going on in Gaza, with this conflict dragging on for so long, we felt that it was absolutely critical that there be a ray of hope. And that ray of hope partially exists in the renewed commitment by the international community to the two-state solution, to a Palestinian state, because that's a strong signal to everyone, but most particularly to the Palestinian people, that there is actually a hope for them to live in peace and harmony side by side with Israel, that there is a pathway through dialogue, through diplomacy, through working through the international systems. And I think the overwhelming support, not just through recognition by very important countries, but the adoption of the final communique, the final document of the conference, was an important signal. From my perspective, we've said now for decades that the two-state solution is the only solution to the conflict between Palestine and Israel. And many countries have stated that as their policy. Now, our argument was, well, if that is indeed your policy and you recognize Israel, then it is now time to recognize Palestine, to draw a line under that statement. Because non-recognition of Palestine, or the idea of that recognition would only come at the end of the process, served as a signal that perhaps we were open to other ideas other than a Palestinian state. And I think the international community has stated very clearly that they are committed to the idea of Palestinian self-determination through statehood, but also through a process, a diplomatic process, through dialogue. And I think that's incredibly important.
The United States, President Trump has touted other ideas. Has that been one of the reasons why this push for this moment has been so urgent?
I think what I want to focus on is that there is global consensus, that there is a clear support for Palestinian self-determination. Even the US, I think, understands that there is no stability and security in our region without addressing the Palestinian issue and without finding a pathway for Palestinians to build their own future. And our opinion is that that is only achievable in a sustainable way through granting them self-determination and the establishment of a Palestinian state.
Israel has described the move as absurd. They've said that Benjamin Netanyahu has said there never will be a two-state solution. What do you say to critics and those, even here in the United States, who say this is a gift to Hamas?
I say it is exactly the contrary. It is a repudiation to all extremists, because it shows very clearly that the international community is supportive of the rights of the Palestinians, and that the rights of Palestinians have strong advocates that believe in achieving those rights through dialogue, through diplomacy, through the international system. And that is actually, in my opinion, the only way that we're going to move forward. Violence will only engender more violence and will not allow us to move forward in a positive way. So I think it is in the interest of all the Palestinians, but also the Israelis, to finally look to a better future, to finally look to coexistence in a way that is sustainable. And again, we've seen that the global consensus is very clear that the right way to do that is through a Palestinian state.
In the past, you've described Israel's military campaign, their onslaught in Gaza, as genocidal. Do you believe they are committing a genocide in Gaza?
Well, I mean, it's not me that believes that. It's a concurrence of many global experts on genocide, including, I would say, even Israeli experts on the subject. Whether you call it a genocide or not, I do call it that. The facts are undeniable. Children are dying of hunger because aid is not being allowed in. Entire cities are being flattened in a way that makes it almost impossible for people to live there. And that is not justifiable by going after Hamas or going after terrorists. You can go after terrorists with targeted strikes, but there is no justification for entire civilian populations, tens of thousands of women and children being killed by military operations. This is clearly an attempt to make Gaza unlivable for the people of Gaza, for the Palestinians, and to my mind, that meets the definition of a genocide.
I know you've talked about this in the past, and to me as well, about the idea of Saudi normalization with Israel. How do you now get to that place? I know you've addressed this, but just in terms of where we are in this moment.
Well, I mean, at this moment, we need to be focused on relieving the suffering of the people of Gaza. We also need to be focused on getting the hostages out, and achieving a ceasefire. So before we achieve that, there's no point in talking about a pathway to normalization. That said, again, I would refer people to the document that was adopted as a result of the two-state solution conference, which laid out a clear vision for the region, including integration of Israel with its neighbors through the establishment of a Palestinian state. So that pathway remains open. But right now, we need to address the suffering in Gaza, we need to address the need for a ceasefire, and then we need to find a pathway to actually implementing the two-state solution, and that will open up all kinds of opportunities in the future.
And just finally, Prince Faisal, are you hopeful that you and others working towards that goal, that can be achieved?
Well, I don't know if I can be hopeful, given all of the suffering that we're seeing and the daily images of death and destruction in Gaza. But I am resolute, and the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is resolute in working towards a resolution of the current conflict, of the war in Gaza, and of finding a pathway to resolving the outside standing issues between the Israelis and Palestinians, and working towards a Palestinian state and Palestinian and Israeli coexistence, which will open up all kinds of opportunities in the region. And I am most encouraged by the attention that President Trump is now giving to the matter, and his clear statement that he wants to find a pathway to an end to the war in Gaza. And that, I think, is going to be critically important over the next few days.
Prince Faisal, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
That's Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, the Saudi foreign minister, speaking to me there. Let's bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone. Mark, it's interesting, isn't it, listening to the Saudis? They're the heavyweights here. And for now, they feel they have Donald Trump's ear. The big question is what happens between now and when Benjamin Netanyahu speaks tomorrow and then meets Donald Trump over the weekend and on Monday.
Yeah, and remember, too, that the Saudis have some sense of leverage as well, because they know that Donald Trump wants to further his Abraham Accords. That's the normalization between Arab countries and Israel that you were talking to him about. They know that Donald Trump really wants that. And if he wants that, then he has got to somehow play his part, the key part, in solving the Palestinian question. You know, in this building for so many decades now, they've referred to it as the Palestinian question, because no one has an answer for it. And it's clearly become so much more urgent in the, 700 days of this horrific war. And so, yeah, they are absolutely key in this. But it's interesting that and we'll talk about Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, in a moment, no one wants to give Trump an ultimatum and say, if you don't do this, we won't do that, because they know Trump doesn't like that. But the key is Trump. But the other key is Netanyahu. He's here tomorrow for his speech. He made that curious flight path from Israel to here because he can't fly over European airspace because he could be arrested effectively. He'll be here tomorrow. There will be protests. I think the biggest protests we've seen this week will happen tomorrow. And then he'll spend the weekend in the US before going to Washington on Monday. And that, I think, will be a really, really important meeting. But we've said it so many times before, but I do think there is a new sense of momentum right now.
Yeah, a new sense of momentum and urgency in this moment. And of course, earlier we showed Mahmoud Abbas speaking, giving his address, because of course he couldn't come here.
He couldn't, and so he gave it from the presidential palace in Ramallah, in the West Bank. I've listened to many speeches that he's given over the years, 89 years old. There's a density to his speeches. They are dense, they're heavy, he gets into the weeds, and they're not particularly easy to listen to. This one I felt was different. Clearly he and his advisors felt they needed to hit certain buttons succinctly, and they needed not to upset Donald Trump. And so while it would have been very easy for him to be critical of Trump for having not let him and his advisors, his diplomatic team into the United States, he could easily have criticized Trump for that. He didn't. He could have criticized Trump for having not hitherto put more pressure on Netanyahu. Again, he didn't. No criticism for Trump. In fact, the opposite. He was very clear that he welcomes Trump's help. That was interesting. And then I thought he was, in an unusually succinct way, he pointed out the difference between him and Hamas. He pointed out how horrific and abhorrent the October the 7th attacks were. He's done it before, but this is a moment, you know, in all the noise of the past 700 days, we haven't heard much from the Palestinian Authority, largely, I guess, because he's kind of a bit of an irrelevance because he's so old, he's got an illegitimacy around him because there's been no elections for so long. This was his moment to remind everyone, we are not Hamas, we are not terrorists, we are the future in Gaza, we want to be a partner to Israel, we want a two-state solution. He hit all those buttons. We are not anti-Semitic, he said. So I thought it was actually, for a pretty dry man whose speeches are very dense, it was quite an interesting one.
Yeah, it is a big week for them. Don't forget, on Monday, you know, we saw staunch Israel allies coming out, pledging their support for a two-state solution, recognizing a Palestinian state, breaking away from Israel, with Israel feeling isolated. This is a big moment for Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority to step up.
Absolutely, and he would love to have been here to be able to stand around the marble in the General Assembly chamber to make just that point. But you know, as we were saying earlier in the week, that this sort of recognition of the Palestinian state should be for them a celebration. And while it is hugely positive for them, it comes not out of some sort of, you know, olive branch and some finding of common ground between the two sides. It comes out of the rubble, the necessity. It comes out of the rubble of Gaza. But yeah, a key moment now. Monday, very key as well.
Yeah, watching very closely. Mark, thank you so much. And of course, we will be coming back to you a little later in the programme. Well, Israel's offensive has destroyed vast areas of Gaza, displaced about 90% of the population, and caused a catastrophic humanitarian crisis, with experts announcing famine in Gaza City. Well, that's where Israel is now focusing its offensive. I spoke to the UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher. Just have a listen to our conversation.
That will be a matter for the competent authorities, for the ICJ, the ICC. I think lawyers will be arguing over this for a long time, and historians will be arguing over it. The important thing to me is to get that aid moving. Whatever we call it, I just need to see the trucks moving in, and we need to see an end of this starvation. You know, during the ceasefire, we were getting in 500, 600 trucks a day. When I was there, we can do that again. We can reach 2 million people in Gaza very, very fast. And what I've heard this week from President Trump calling for a ceasefire, from all the world leaders, get the aid in and save lives at scale.
You talk about the aid that was getting in during the ceasefire. You talk about the potential of what can happen, but it's not happening. That's the point here, that it's not going in. People are starving. Famine has been declared in parts of Gaza. So what needs to now happen?
Absolutely. We're getting in a fraction of what we need. As I said, 500, 600 trucks a day should be the floor, not the ceiling. And we're getting in a tiny amount, a drop in the ocean of what's actually needed. So we need all the crossings open. We need clear, safe routes. We need to be allowed to use the networks we've got, community networks for distribution. And we need an end to the bureaucratic obstacles, including on NGOs, because we need the NGOs in there, we need the commercial flow. Look, this isn't rocket science. This can be done. We know how to do it at scale and in a neutral, independent, impartial way.
The Israelis, when I've spoken to them, they have publicly said that they have pointed the finger of blame on the UN. They say the trucks are there, they can get in, they're not doing their work, or they're allowing them to be looted, that 87% of the UN trucks are being looted by hungry people, by gangs, by Hamas. How would you respond to that?
We try to rise above some of this stuff because it is a bit of a distraction. Basically, can you imagine that we would deliberately leave our supplies just sat there? We're humanitarians. It's our job to get those supplies moving. We face these restraints. We unload, we have to load back up again, we have to wait for security clearances. We have our people kicked out or denied security clearances to stay there, do their job. Our brilliant coordinator on the ground told that he can no longer coordinate our work. So we're having to work around all these obstacles all the time. And look, we are getting a lot of our supplies looted. That's true. They're being looted by hungry, angry civilians who know exactly which road our convoys are coming down because it's very clear in advance where we're operating. And until we flood Gaza with aid, that looting will remain high. The black market will continue to be stimulated because we're not able to get in the supplies at scale which are needed.
The Israelis have also said that, frankly, the operation of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is being sabotaged by the likes of the UN because they don't want it to work, because they only want their system, the UN system, to be able to flood Gaza with aid, and therefore you're not providing the kind of support that you should be to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
So only the UN and our humanitarian partners across the humanitarian community, including the NGOs, can do this at the scale required. And it's a massive, massive scale to turn around this level of starvation. But we're not in the business of going around sabotaging other efforts. We want to see the food get through and as much food as possible.
Do you believe that a ceasefire can be reached, that there are currently talks behind the scenes of potentially moving things along? We know that Benjamin Netanyahu on his way to New York and then to DC. Do you think anything's likely to change?
We have to keep hoping. Even hope over expectation. Every day we get up, and that's what we work for. It's what the Secretary General has called for repeatedly in his statements, including in his big statement to the GA. It's what President Trump and so many other world leaders called for. Ultimately, we can do as much as we can on the humanitarian side, but it's the ceasefire that really makes all that difference.
Mr. Fletcher, help our audiences. I mean, we often report and try and paint a picture of the situation in Gaza, but help our audiences understand what your teams are seeing on the ground.
I mean, I don't know really how our teams are coping. When I check in with them, many of our Palestinian staff are themselves, of course, starving. They've been displaced time and time and time again. They've lost family members. They've lost hundreds of colleagues, of course, because we ourselves have been under attack and our buildings have come under attack. So this work is really hard, but we are so committed to staying and delivering as much as we can in the conditions that we face. But our people every day, they're going into the hospitals and seeing kids having limbs amputated without anesthetic. They know that the food is there at the border and that we could save lives at scale. So they're dealing with frustration, they're dealing with anger, they're dealing with despair, but they're humanitarians, and so they just keep on going.
Do you think an aspect of it is UN incompetence on those borders? Donald Trump has described the UN as ineffective, not being a partner in resolving global conflicts for him.
Look, there was a brilliant meeting between President Trump and Secretary General Guterres after the speech, where they were really focused on this common agenda around peacemaking, ending conflicts, on which the President was absolutely clear in his statement, and of course the SG is utterly committed to it. But no, I don't accept that we are incompetent, because I work every day with our teams in these crises globally. They are incredibly committed, passionate, experienced humanitarians. They know how to do this, and so no, I will not take that criticism of our operations. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. I challenge anyone to come into the situations that we deal with and deliver. So of course we have our flaws, of course we're imperfect, but we're not giving up, and I will always defend the work of our people.
Let's talk about Sudan, because of course this is another major humanitarian crisis. We have had a team in North Darfur. Just talk us through the challenges you're facing there.
Sudan's the big one. Massive, massive challenges. You've got 30 million people in need of aid. I've come from a lot of meetings yesterday on Sudan, particularly looking at the situation in Al-Fasher, under siege at the moment, tens of thousands of people trapped there, desperate. So we need to get the humanitarian corridors open. We need ceasefire, basically, here as elsewhere. We need that humanitarian access. We've got to get civilians to safety. Sudan is a very, very complex, difficult place for us to work. We are massively underfunded. We're only about 20% funded across the Sudan effort, but we also face these political obstacles and a massively insecure situation in which, again, we lose many colleagues because of the dangers that we run.
They've told our teams, those who have been fleeing the fighting, that frankly the international community has completely abandoned them. There are no food trucks coming, there is no aid, there is no support, there is no attention.
We absolutely have not abandoned the civilians of Sudan, and we have those convoys ready to go. We've got to get them through the checkpoints. Often when we hit the checkpoints, then we are hit ourselves. And so we have to try and find the security that we need. We're demanding it from the world so we can deliver. There are 30 trucks right now in Yalda that we want to get into Al-Fasher to meet the needs of that civilian population. So we're there. Sudan was my first trip in the job. In my first week in the job, I went and spent a week in Sudan to try to bring that visibility and attention that the Sudanese people need. And I feel that this week we've been getting that. We've been getting that high-level attention. Yesterday, a very, very good meeting with regional players, with the Europeans, with the Americans. We've got to try everything to get those supplies moving, but also to get this ceasefire.
We know that there is a lot of foreign interference in Sudan as well, from the likes of the Russians, the UAE, the Turks, the Saudis. There have been accusations of everyone meddling in the affairs of the fighting factions in Sudan. What would you say to them to stop doing what they're doing in terms of supporting the various sides so that the much-needed humanitarian aid can get in?
Well, I think there have been openings this week in the conversations that we've had, in the very, very practical engagement with all of the regional players, but also, as I say, with the Europeans, with the Americans, with the African Union, and that sense that we do need this common program now. Let's kind of put aside the politics, put aside all the other dimensions, and just focus on getting as much humanitarian support through as possible, and let's focus on a peaceful resolution to this conflict, which has gone on far too long and taken far too many lives.
Mr. Fletcher, finally, I mean, what are you hoping out of these two particular conflicts happens over the course of the next few weeks and months following the UN General Assembly meetings?
I think that's exactly the right question, Yalda. We've got to move from statements of concern. The people of Sudan and Gaza can't eat statements of concern. They can't eat UN resolutions. They can't eat fiery speeches from the podium. We've got to think about the practicalities. I want that access to Al-Fasher and the Kordofans in Sudan. I want to get our teams into Darfur full-time and into Khartoum, where they can be on the ground delivering without impediment in Sudan. And I want to get scaled up funding for those operations, because even when we get in, the money is running out and the supplies are running out. Likewise on Gaza, I want to see those hundreds of trucks every day going in. I want to see an end to that starvation. I want to see the world coming together and saying, if we can do one thing, let's now meet the needs of the Palestinian population. Let's get the hostages home, and let's find some way to get this back onto a better political trajectory. I think, honestly, all of the knockabout to one side, all of the drama of this week, I think those will be the real stories of this week, that we've come together in those practical ways to try and meet these massive needs of these populations in Gaza, Sudan, Ukraine, DRC, Afghanistan, and all of the other crises that we work on.
That was UN Humanitarian Chief Tom Fletcher speaking to me a little earlier. Before we go into our next report about Sudan and what Tom Fletcher was talking about, let's actually go to the Oval Office, where Donald Trump in the last few minutes was speaking about Gaza. Let's have a listen in.
Well, thank you very much. We've had some very really good talks today on Gaza with both the Middle East representatives and kings and all of the top leaders in the Middle East. And we had also a very good conversation with Bibi Netanyahu, trying to get the hostages back, and we're trying to get the end of the Gaza situation. It's really bad, very bad. And we think it could happen. Maybe it could happen pretty soon. We want the hostages back. We want the bodies back. And we want to have peace in that region. So we had some very good talks. As you know, I had President Erdogan here of Turkey, and we had a great meeting today. I think we had a meeting that was very conclusive in so many different things that we wanted, things that he wanted, and that was good. We'll be announcing that sometime later, and he'll be making an announcement too. But we had a great meeting with Turkey, and they're a very respected president, and spent time. We had lunch, and we had a lot of good discussions. So those two things. And we have some executive orders today to sign that are very important for the country. And we'll start off with one that's a proclamation. And yes, sir. You want to do that, Will?
Yes, sir. So today is Gold Star Mothers and Families Day. This is an annual proclamation. This is to commemorate the fallen, those who have died for all of our freedoms and for our country, and for their families who have suffered such grievous losses. But this is a proclamation commemorating Gold Star Mothers and Gold Star Families.
Yeah, and they're great people, incredible people. What they've had to go through. Very few people could have gone through this kind of thing. Gold Star. Okay, thank you very much. He'll put it over here, Steve.
Next, sir, we have an executive order on TikTok. From the first days of your administration, you've charged a team from your administration led by Vice President Vance with ensuring that we can preserve TikTok as a platform for the 170 million Americans who use it, while ensuring that their data is properly protected as required by law. With this executive order, you will be effectively bringing into effect the agreement that will save TikTok and ensure that it can operate safely and securely.
So this is interesting because I had a very good talk with President Xi, a lot of respect for him. Hopefully he has a lot of respect for me too. And we talked about TikTok and other things, but we talked about TikTok and he gave us the go-ahead. You know, it's run by American investors and American companies, great ones, great investors, the biggest. You don't get bigger, I don't imagine. And maybe I'll have JD. JD was very much involved and in charge of it. And maybe I'll have you say a few words about the deal. He would report back, and the points of the deal, I think, are great for our country. So, JD, do you want to give it a little talk, please?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so thank you, sir, for your leadership and for your help. We really couldn't have done this without the president actually ushering this deal over the finish line. There was some resistance on the Chinese side, but the fundamental thing that we wanted to accomplish is that we wanted to keep TikTok operating, but we also wanted to make sure that we protected Americans' data privacy as required by law, both because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's a legal requirement of the law that was passed last year by Congress. So we think that we were able to do that. Of course, we're going to keep on working at it, but this deal really does mean that Americans can use TikTok, but actually use it with more confidence than they had in the past, because their data is going to be secure and it's not going to be used as a propaganda weapon against our fellow citizens. We're very excited about it. We appreciate the cooperation of everybody involved, and it's a big day.
And I think I can say that especially the young people, they really wanted this to happen. They did not want to have TikTok close. And I got, you know, a little used to TikTok. I used it myself during the campaign, and it was very successful because you know how I did with the young voter. And Charlie helped me a lot too. And he said to me, you should go on TikTok. And it actually had, because we got record votes with the young voter, as you know, for the election. So I was a little bit prejudiced in that way toward TikTok. It was very good and very meaningful. But we have American investors taking it over, running it, highly sophisticated, including Larry Ellison. And Oracle, I guess, is going to play a very big role in terms of security, safety, and everything else. So we have very good controls. And literally, I would get a call from friends of mine who were fathers of young people saying, could you do me a favor? Could you get it approved, please? My son is driving me crazy. So we're getting it done, and they have a big audience, and we have great American investors. And here's your final copy. TikTok. You know, maybe if you want, we could take a couple of questions on TikTok, and then we're going to get onto something completely different. Okay? Yeah.
Mr. President,
Jeff?
Mr. Vice President, you mentioned that China was resistant. Can you describe where China is now? Are they fully on board with this?
They're on board, yeah. I spoke with President Xi. We had a good talk. I told him what we were doing, and he said, go ahead with it.
On the algorithm, it's still being leased coming from China. Are you satisfied that there's no security concerns for the
Yeah,
US?
I am. I really am.
It would push disruptive
The
content?
biggest reason is that it's owned by Americans, and very sophisticated Americans, and people that love the country, and very smart Americans too. So they don't want anything like that to happen. Yes, please.
Thank you. Is there any operational relationship with Chinese entities or staff to execute the deal?
With who?
With the Chinese?
I don't think so. Not that I know. No, this is going to be American operated all the way. And great respect for President Xi, and I very much appreciate that he approved the deal, because to get it done properly, we really needed the support of China and the approval of China. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, now that Americans will have operational control, do you want to see the algorithm suggest more MAGA-related content prioritized?
I always like MAGA-related. If I could, I'd make it 100% MAGA-related. It's actually a good question, but I would, yeah, if I could make it 100% MAGA, I would, but it's not going to work out that way, unfortunately. No, everyone's going to be treated fairly. Every group, every philosophy, every policy will be treated very fairly. Thank you.
Mr. President, do you know the valuation? Do you know the American company is going to be valued in the billions?
Well, they valued it very highly. They're paying a big number. Do you want to talk, Scott? Do you want to say something about value?
Well, with the Vice
Okay,
President,
good.
and then
JD?
I can follow
And
up.
you'll say something.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say all credit goes to the Secretary of the Treasury. Couldn't have got it done without Scott. Also couldn't have got it done without Sean Cooksey on my team, so thanks to them. The company will be valued around $14 billion. We actually think this is a good deal for investors, but ultimately the investors are going to make the determination about what they want to invest in and what they think is a proper value. The most important thing is that it does protect Americans' data security. It ensures TikTok is still accessible. And on this question of the algorithm, which we've heard this a lot, what this deal ensures is that the American entity and the American investors will actually control the algorithm. We don't want this used as a propaganda tool by any foreign government. We want to make sure that our people and our investors actually make these decisions based on what's good for their business as opposed to what's good for another government's propaganda arm. So that's what we've done with this deal. I think it's very good for the American people. And as the president said, young people love this. We actually want everybody to access this, whether they're MAGA or not. We just want it to be fair. We want it to be fair to everybody. And we think that's what's going to happen with this new arrangement.
Well, the U.S. government...
And just to follow up on the Vice President, there were two pieces to the transaction. The Vice President's
You're listening there to J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and before him, Donald Trump, the U.S. President, talking there about that crucial TikTok sale deal that Donald Trump says he negotiated with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. He signed an executive order for that sale plan, which he says meets U.S. requirements when it comes to data protection. You'll remember the concerns about the Chinese accessing data from TikTok. Over 170 million Americans use TikTok, mostly young people across the United States. And the previous administration, Joe Biden's administration, Donald Trump's administration have had grave concerns about TikTok and data protection. But Donald Trump now says that this executive order will push through the sale plan, which now meets U.S. requirements. Before that, Donald Trump was speaking about the war in Gaza and the meetings that he has had here at the UN General Assembly this week with Arab leaders, with Muslim leaders, to try and bring an end to that war. He's due to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu, so we will have to wait and see what happens with that. Now, before we heard from President Trump, we had the UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, speaking about Sudan's war, which is approaching a third year. Efforts to end it, including here at the UN, have either stalled or gone nowhere. What began as a power struggle between two rival generals has spiraled into what's regarded as the world's largest humanitarian crisis. At least 150,000 people, likely many more, have been killed. 13 million are displaced. 30 million need aid. Now, an intelligence officer with one of the warring sides, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, has told Sky News what's widely suspected, that the UAE is backing them with sophisticated and devastating weapons. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bagir reports from North Darfur.
The war in Darfur never ended. It only intensified and spread across the country. Villages have been burnt and abandoned again and again in Western Sudan. From over 2 decades of terror by the tribal militia turned paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces. We went to one of the remaining state-held towns in North Darfur. There's a nervous calm. The market squares are full of former rebels who've aligned with the state to fight the RSF and see everyone as a potential threat.
We're in the heart of a town called Umboro, which is held by state-aligned forces. But there is still a sense of fear and paralysis about whether the RSF could strike at any moment. The RSF has a sprawling network of formal soldiers and foreign mercenaries, but also of informants and collaborators.
These fighters are the kings of this hill. In the early 2000s, they were the rebels, but not anymore. Now the Sudanese army uses them to fight a common enemy, the RSF. We went to meet an intelligence commander outside one of their key strongholds.
Our right to the land means we have to fight until our last breath.
Who is supplying these arms to the RSF?
According to our sources, the weapons come from the UAE. Chad is just a corridor for these arms to reach Sudan. Chad's Adre crossing was opened by the Sudanese government for humanitarian access, but the RSF have used it for inhumanity. That is where a majority of the arms are smuggled across.
According to his intelligence, supplies travel from Chad through the Adre crossing into RSF-held West Darfur and its capital, Al Jinena. The Adre crossing is only one of 3 smuggling corridors the commander says passes through Chad. The second, he says, runs south of Al Tina into North Darfur. And further north, he describes RSF arms and supplies arriving at Chad's Amjeris airport and heading to their main base and supply hub in Zurug town. These are videos sent to him by sources at the Chad-Sudan border. This one, he says, shows an arms delivery passing through the Adre crossing into West Darfur. There are no visible weapons or any identifiable branding. And these are land cruisers passing through the same crossing that he's told are painted in RSF colors and turned into lethal technicals. All of this, he says, is supplied by the United Arab Emirates. It's difficult to verify the location, destination, or contents of the vehicles in this footage, but UAE war machinery has been captured from the RSF during their deadly siege on North Darfur's capital, Al-Fashir. This video, shared after fierce battles outside the city, shows Sudanese state forces in front of burning armored vehicles. After comparing them to publicly available reference images, Sky News has determined the vehicles are designed by a UAE-based company. We presented the allegations in this report to the UAE's foreign ministry. This was their response. The UAE notes a marked increase in unfounded accusations and deliberate propaganda from the so-called Port Sudan Authority, one of the warring parties to the civil war, which actively undermines efforts to end the conflict and restore stability. We categorically reject any claims of providing any form of support to either warring party since the onset of the civil war, and condemn atrocities committed by both Port Sudan Authority and RSF. Publicly, the RSF has not acknowledged support from any external actors. But in an exclusive secret interview, an RSF intelligence officer from North Darfur confirms UAE support.
When you speak to RSF fighters in the field, what are they telling you about the support that they're receiving from other countries?
In
the beginning, it was the Russians, Wagner and the state. Now they say it's the UAE supporting the RSF. Many of the planes landing in Niala are said to bring weapons from the UAE, and particularly through Amjaris airport in Chad.
Why do you think that the UAE supports the RSF? What's the mutual interest?
It's a financial relationship, no more. The RSF controls areas with large gold mines. Darfur alone has more than 4 or 5 gold mines, and the UAE is a gold trading hub.
After losing their 2-year grip on Sudan's capital, Khartoum, the RSF tightened its siege on Al-Fashir, hell-bent on capturing North Darfur and completing their control of the region.
They killed people and burned 49 villages down. They didn't leave anything for us, even the little we packed to take with us. They would tell us to leave. This is not your country.
You've come here and you found safety, but do you really feel safe?
I'm scared. There's no safety, even here. It feels they are just quiet because of the rainy season, but they've been threatening to come here to Umbaro.
These Darfuri villages and towns are ground zero for the RSF's scorched earth policy, now living through a dark déjà vu, 2 decades on, raided by violent militiamen, more powerful and well-armed than ever before. Yusra al-Baghir, Sky News, North Darfur.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. More special coverage from Sudan coming up. We hear from the men risking torture and death to smuggle food into a besieged city gripped by famine.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force. It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's U.S. correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Mr. President, what will you say next to Benjamin Netanyahu? In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent. I've interviewed some of America's most recognisable politicians. Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting.
Mr. Walker, you're anti-abortion, but 2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir?
Connor, what did you say to the President? What did you say?
We had a great meeting with him. He's a great man.
I'm David Blevins, one of Sky's US correspondents, based in Washington, D.C.
David Blevins from Sky News. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that?
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism?
I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
The anger too, and the division.
Where are you from? From Sky News, UK.
Yeah.
Back up.
Mr. Navarro,
I'm allowed to ask questions, aren't I?
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C.
Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. Has your ego and ignorance cost Ukrainian lives?
David Cameron needs to worry about his own country, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Mr. Patel, did you endanger public safety when you said the killer was in custody?
Free wherever you get your news.
What words do you have for Harry Dunn's family today?
Have a nice day.
Do you fear a 4th indictment?
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
I want to start the programme today with a name, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started. This is your chance. Tell people this is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No,
but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous.
No one does care about us.
I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, he likes to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
Welcome back to The World. Now to the stories of volunteers risking capture, torture and death to smuggle food and medicine into a besieged city in Western Sudan. After 2.5 years of war, Sudan's map resembles a patchwork of territorial control. The city of Al-Fashir is at the center of recent fighting, and its 900,000 residents are in a desperate situation. Activists who emerged from Sudan's 2019 revolution are working to get whatever they can inside. Their mission is extremely dangerous, slipping in and out of smuggling routes that rapidly open and close. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Begir met the volunteers.
Donkeys, pickup trucks, and even on foot. Volunteers are breaking their backs and risking their lives to get food into the famine-ridden besieged capital of North Darfur. We meet 2 food smuggling coordinators in secret. Young men tasked with making sure life-saving supplies reach families in Al-Fashir. Their phones won't stop ringing, and then the bad news arrives.
We just got a message from HQ that one of our guys smuggling insulin hasn't arrived. He's likely to have been killed.
How many volunteers have you lost?
I can't give you an overall number, but this week alone we've lost 30 volunteers.
30?
Yes, 30.
Who's targeting them?
The Rapid Support Forces.
They take us to one of their secret storerooms in the market, where piles of food wait to be smuggled out.
The دقيق
This is flour, this is pasta, there's flour over there, that is sugar. This is from Libya, but we bring it in through Chad. And this is salt. We don't get much beyond the bare essentials, so people can eat and not starve to death. These supplies leave here by car and stop at different stations, then are moved onto camels, horses, before being redistributed again on foot. The teams will take the supplies to locations near Al-Fasher and share their GPS coordinates with our teams inside the city. They'll wait a few days until it's safe and collect the supplies from the locations.
WFP aid trucks stacked with food have been attacked as they approached Al-Fasher by RSF fighters upholding their brutal siege. This is the current state of Al-Fasher's skyline, darkened by smoke as the RSF bombards residential areas with heavy artillery and drone strikes. No trucks carrying supplies of any kind can approach the area. Everything is now riding on volunteers to smuggle in food and medicine to save thousands of civilians eating animal feed to survive. Aid workers and the drivers of these trucks face the same dangers that volunteers face trying to get food into RSF-held areas and Al-Fasher during the siege. But just the sight of these trucks, static, in the sun, brimming with food, shows how man-made this famine is. Back in the storeroom, they show us what happens to volunteers caught taking in food. The young men in this video are still missing. Just one group of many that have been disappeared by the RSF for smuggling in supplies.
You know you're going from one danger to the next. There's no guarantee you'll survive. There's about a 90% chance you won't make it. But that 10% chance means you can get supplies in and save the sick, the injured, the starving. If you don't do it, it'll be a slow genocide. So better to die trying. We have no other option but to take these risks.
These extreme conditions require extreme courage from young people committed to providing relief. Each life on the line is a life saved from this deadly, suffocating siege. Yusra al-Bagher, Sky News, North Darfur.
Well, overshadowing the UN this week have been alleged incursions by Russia into NATO airspace. It's drones and planes accused of straying over borders. And now Moscow is suspected of taking this behavior up into space. Europe correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports.
This drone filmed flying near Aalborg Airport in northern Denmark last night forced planes to be grounded and was the second drone incident near Danish airports in under a week. It happened a few days after multiple drones were spotted flying around Copenhagen Airport, which halted operations near the capital for many hours.
Danish officials have been reluctant to point the finger at Moscow, but they have said that a professional actor was behind this, suggesting that it was not an amateur drone enthusiast or plane spotter. Moscow has denied any involvement.
But the Danish Prime Minister has spoken to the NATO Secretary-General to consider a response, which suggests that this is being treated as an international incident, not a domestic one.
We are not yet in a place where we know for sure who is behind it, but there must be no doubt that everything indicates that it is a professional actor when it comes to such a systematic operation at so many locations almost simultaneously. This is what I would define as a hybrid attack with different types of drones. These are actions that could endanger our security and freedom.
Earlier this month, unarmed Russian drones were detected flying into Polish airspace. Some of them were shot down. Shortly after, drones were flown into Romanian airspace. And then last week, 2 Russian fighter jets spent 12 minutes in Estonian airspace, at one point on a flight path towards the capital, Tallinn.
Well, I think that what we are seeing is the kind of pattern of provocations. The pattern that we sometimes call hybrid warfare. You are talking about the recent incursions in the Polish or Estonian airspace, but let's not forget what happened in the Baltic Sea around Christmas time. We had a couple of incidents with undersea cables, but it seems that currently Russia is simply testing NATO, testing the European Union, testing the resolve that we have to resist such kind of provocations.
NATO has increased its air policing along its eastern flank in recent days, including RAF jets patrolling the skies above Poland.
This sort of behaviour falls below the threshold of traditional warfare, which complicates any response from NATO or European countries. It definitely seems designed to test NATO defences and expose their shortcomings in dealing with drones.
Also today, the German defence minister accused Russia of aggression in space, using some of its satellites to chase satellites used by NATO militaries.
The suspicion is obvious. It is part of Vladimir Putin's strategy, without us being able to say so specifically in this case. But it is part of what we experience every day. We are not at war, but we are no longer at complete peace either. We are under attack. Hybrid attacks in the form of disinformation campaigns and indeed drone incursions. That is the reality we are facing and dealing with.
Moscow has denied that it was behind the latest Danish drone incident. Many won't believe them. NATO is being probed and its weaknesses exposed. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News.
Well, that's it from me and the team here in New York. Stay with Sky News if you can. Anna Botting is next with the news at 10. Goodbye.